Back here, Tony DeAngelo on Connecticut Morning, our February 12th, 2013
Hello.
edition. Hi, you are hearing the voice of our next guest, our guest of honor for the hour, Denny McLain, a former American League baseball player, pitcher, won 31 games in 1968, a legendary figure, a dear man, a beloved figure in Detroit and throughout the league, someone whom I watched as a lad, whom I absolutely loved watching to pitch when he came to New York. He won the Cy Young Award twice. He's a three-time All-Star, a man who's had a number of diverse and very descriptive events throughout his life. There has never been any like Denny McLain. Denny, it's Tony DeAngelo. So nice to have you here this morning, my friend.
Thanks, Tony. It's nice to be with you.
And I started this show. Now we're in Connecticut, as you know, and we've got tons and tons of snow. I mean, I know in Michigan you guys see snow all the time, and you're laughing at us like, why can't these turkeys get us together? Because that's kind of a way of life for you, out there.
Well, no, we had a bunch of it too. The difference with us is that we got a bunch of rain right after it and got rid of most of it. So we've been lucky so far, but we've had our share of snow this winter. It just we haven't had the freezing weather that we normally have at the same time. So we've been lucky.
Well, that's a good thing. I mean, because when it gets cold there, it gets incredibly cold. I mean,
yeah, it really does.
Yeah,
especially the wind here. The wind gets to be dramatic.
And we have the snaps here, but certainly not the consistency that you guys might have. But anyway, in thinking and looking at the snow, and we have a little bit of sun trying to peek through over here in the studio. And normally this time of the year, I'm getting excited about baseball and spring training and who's going to do what and who's going to be where. And Denny, it's like I need a moment's here of counseling. I'm just not very excited about this year. It seems that we've got more issues, more scandals, more quirky things happening, and there's economic issues. The Mets can't keep a free agent. The Yankees are fielding a very old team. I don't know. Am I right? Am I wrong? Help me and help us all, really.
Well, I don't think things are any better or any worse than they were. Well, obviously they're better than they were 8 years ago. There's no question about that. I mean, the country almost went bankrupt. God forbid when we think about that.
Oh, sure.
But the guy who's been president, I don't know if there's anybody that could have done a better job. I don't know if anybody could have done a worse job. But based upon everything he's done so far, and while I'm not a big-time promoter of him,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't imagine another 4 years of what Bush put us into. I think that would have been even worse, although unless he listened to the same people. I think what we fail to realize is just solid citizens is that nobody goes into that White House, I don't think, thinking to overthrow the government, trying to see the country crash, trying to see us, burn and dive into the ocean. I mean, I don't think anybody. I think everybody's filled with good intentions. Then I think once you get in there, it's just like with a baseball team. Once you get in there, you go in there with your 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we appreciate? Let's go get them. Go get them. Go get them. Once you get in there, you realize that the job is not a minuscule pimple on a goat's butt type of job. This is a monster job designed by a goat. And unfortunately, it takes a whole lot more energy and people and professionalism and expertise and brains, which a lot of us don't possess, to organize the chaos. And I mean, I still think we're in a great deal of chaos, but I think the chaos in some areas, the most important parts, I think is at least stable at this moment. And where we go from here, who knows? I guess we'll know what the president wants to do tonight. Until we hear that speech tonight, we're not going to be quite sure. But listen, a lot of people can scream and holler about the Obamacare. I got to tell you, I know people who are on it now, and they love it, and they've got kids in college, and the kids are still covered, and all kinds of good things come out of it. It's like this. you always hear that, and I'm in Detroit. Let's keep that in mind. I'm
Yes,
outside the city,
yes.
about 35.
Denny is in
miles.
Detroit. Okay.
I hear a lot of criticism about people getting help from the state or the federal government. Until you have to beg for a check for a couple $100 a month to eat with your kids, you don't know what that is. You don't know the kind of pain. And thank God it's available to people, because if it wasn't, how much worse could our homeless situation be, our lack of food situation be?
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
How many more food kitchens would we need to support and give food out to the people who need it the most? So my point is, until you actually get in that door, and I'm talking about Obama for a second,
Mm-hmm.
you really don't know how big the monster can be. And of course, when he entered there, as Bush went out there, the monster was growing by leaps and bounds. And I like George Bush. I like him as a guy.
Mm-hmm.
But when he left there, that monster was eating people and states and countries and cars and anything else. And lo and behold, that's what Obama walked into. And I think the biggest disgrace that we've seen in the last 8 years is the amount of racism. I think the racism is just, I never had any idea how bad it was, but I think it's 100 times worse than what I thought.
And maybe that's an interesting point, and certainly not to take you off your track of discussion, but you were a major league player, and the Tigers, you had all races, differing cultures, and it was a different era. But what was it like in the major leagues as far as race as a major league ball player? Was it an issue, and how was it dealt with?
No, you know what? If you were, we had a lot of baseball players come from the South. No question about it. And I don't know what the percentage today is of baseball players who grew up in the South with the racist situation that still exists in this country, as we all know. But it just wasn't talked about. Yeah, listen, we had arguments where black guys and white guys would get into arguments and what have you, and once in a while race would come up, and things like that. Some cheap shots would be taken, but I don't remember it being as horrific and nasty as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
It's so personal. I mean, it's like the silliest thing in the world. You had Donald Trump in New York, and he's screaming and hollering about a birth certificate. I mean, my God. I mean, to waste television time, his time, and everybody else's time on such a ridiculous subject was absolutely outrageous. And a lot of people went for it. I mean, that's the thing that got my attention, that they actually believed what poor Donald, I mean, I just think Donald is, he might be ready for some pablum. But, the bottom line simply is we didn't have it as loudly. We didn't have it anywhere near as loudly as it is today. The game has taken care of itself when it's come to racism, pretty much. I mean, they've done a real good job integrating minority players. I mean, we've got Cubans, we've got Venezuelans, I mean, we've got
Dominicans,
Black, we've got Japanese, we've got Koreans. I mean, we have truly become an international nations of representation by these kids who are coming over here to play, and rightfully so. Listen, they're great players. It's I know we invented the game, but it's nice to see other countries be able to produce some talent.
Well, and that's an interesting thing. And while I have the privilege of having you, my friend Bob Lazari, whom we interviewed you in Willimantic several months back, and we might get in a car on a Saturday, and we live in northeastern Connecticut. We'll drive around on a beautiful Saturday, and we'll look at empty ball field after empty ball field after empty ball field.
Right.
We're shaking our heads. We're like, why aren't these kids are playing? And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is baseball really kind of in danger here of sort of losing a generation and perhaps a hold on America?
No, not by any stretch. Let's back up, take a deep breath, and step back.
Okay.
Listen. I laugh every year when they say, well, the most popular game in the world is the NFL. Folks, they play 16 games, and they play one big game a year. Have them play a game every day, and let's see how many times they fill up the ballpark. It's not going to happen every day. It doesn't happen. It's too repetitive at that point in time. Obviously, in the NFL, after about 30 weeks, you may not be able to field a complete team, as hard as these guys are and as big and fast as they
Sure.
are. But no, I think the game is the game. It's still the greatest game of all. It's our game. We invented this game. And the ball field thing bothers me a little bit. I totally agree with you. The difference is when I was growing up in the 40s and the 50s, because I didn't get out of high school until 62, the bottom line was your mother and father were more involved with you at that point in time. For some, it was the nature of our communities back then. And the other thing that I remind everybody, when I was growing up, I actually knew who the neighbors were. We knew who the neighbors were across the street, a block from us, 2 blocks away. And where are those relationships gone? That's I think the saddest part about it. We don't know anybody that lives on our block anymore. So those are the things where, for some reason, have deteriorated in some form for whatever reason. But the game is the game, and I think what's got to happen is somehow, some way. And I hate to put this on the school districts and what have you, but somebody in these school districts has to reorganize, I think, some of the sports programs. I also believe that, and I love high school football, I love college football, the NFL, but I think somebody has to rethink baseball and other sports in grade school and in high school. I think they need to give it more attention. I'm not sure if they've got the money, but I know this. There's a mother and a father, or there's a grandfather and a grandmother, or several grandfathers out there that would be pleased to get involved with the local school districts. We've got time. We can do that today. We couldn't do it when we were growing up. Hell, we all had to make a living one way or the other. But I suspect there's an awful lot of help that school districts and churches can reach out for and put some grandparents on the field every night or every other night and work with those kids for teams. And unfortunately, no one has figured out a way to do it yet.
And you think of the mentorship and the camaraderie and just the leadership that would take. That would be a wonderful thing if we can do it. It's just.
And I don't think there's any reason why not. I really believe that, and you know what? They don't have to be the greatest coaches in the world. They just need a figure who will be the leader on the field. And I don't care if it's soccer, baseball, whatever it is. But they need a designated leader who can make sure that they show up for practice. One of the things I believe that our kids have missed is showing up on time for stuff, promptness, being ready to play, being ready to go to school every day, being ready for dinner. I mean, the technology world has thrown our country on its ear, for the lack of a better term. But I still think if you put that guy or that woman back on the field, I think good things can happen. And, God, I mean, we can't ever give up on our country. I would just like to see more done for our kids in one form or another. And, you'd love to be a part of it. I mean, but first of all, it starts with conversations like this. And somebody hears something and somebody goes to the school or a teacher hears what we're talking about, and all of a sudden you got one team. And all of a sudden you got 2 teams. But it starts with one player, one man or one woman, and one ballpark. And then you build it from there. You only hope that it gets there. I mean, that's a job. It's a challenge. And anybody in the school systems that might be listening to this, it's worth it. It's worth the time and the effort.
I fully agree. And as far as that's concerned now, I'm listening to this, we're having this discussion, and a small part of my brain is kind of going back to, your growing up in, was it Chicago City or was it a suburb of Chicago?
Well, for the first 6 or 7 years of my life, it was a city. Mm-hmm. And then the next 10 years, 11 years almost, was in a city called Markham, Illinois, which is a town about 15 miles south of Chicago. So for all practical purposes, it still was the city of Chicago, but we were, 10, 11 miles.
10, 11 miles away. And during this time, you were studying some music, I guess, when you were growing up.
What's that?
You were studying music as well.
Oh, yeah. I went to the Line and Healy School of Music for a long time. That was my first love, to be honest with everybody. And I still play. I just don't play as much as I used to. But, yeah, I've been playing for how the hell old am I? I've been playing for 60 years. I mean, at least 55 or 60 years. So, done an awful lot of stops on the road with that business. It's been very good to us.
And you know, and that's my earliest, or one of my earliest recollections of you. That and the Pepsi, which I guess you're still drinking Pepsi.
Oh yeah, I'm still drinking a Pepsi. I don't drink as many as I once did, but today it's diet, and I'm not drinking, as I said, as many. But I still put a bunch of them away, way too many. But you know, it is what it is. I mean, we all feed off of something. And that's part of my day, drinking Pepsi.
And you know, and bringing all of that back, I kind of picture you, and you know, you're playing ball and you're playing music, and you meet a girl named Sharon whose father happens to be Lou Boudreau. I mean, like, what was your first meeting like? If it was me, I probably would have been terrified.
Well, I was terrified of meeting her father for the first time. What had happened was when I was 14 or 15, we won the state championship in Babe Ruth baseball in Harvey, Illinois. And the night that we won it, we drove all the way back to Chicago, some 3-hour ride back to the city called Harvey, Illinois, actually, and where Lou lived. And Lou hosted the festival and in the celebration that night. And I think it was like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning when it started. So that's how I met Lou, and that's how I met Sharon. And as I've always told her, for the last 50, we're going to be married 50 years.
Oh, God bless you, great.
She was the most beautiful woman I ever saw at the age of 15, and at the age of what she is today, she's still the prettiest woman I've ever seen. So, you know, it's... if there are two people ever made for each other, it was Sharon and I. I mean, we've been through a lot of hell, a lot of wars. We lost our oldest child, and that I don't wish on anybody by any stretch. The worst enemy in the world, I don't wish that on. But you know, it's part of life, and you got to try to pick yourself up, and thank God we supported each other, because there's a statistic out there that if a mother and father lose a child, the chances of staying married are about 40%. And knock on wood, we've survived it so far, because it's been 19 years ago now.
And that was a horrible event. I mean, you know, you've told us about that in the past. Was it drunken driver, or was it a? I'm trying to remember.
It was a drunken driver in a pickup truck, and an 18-wheeler truck driver who decided this is 2 o'clock in the morning. Chrissy was coming home from work. She had dinner with friends after work, and sober as a judge. And lo and behold, the truck driver was blocking 3 lanes of a 4-lane federal highway. He was trying to back his truck into a driveway, and his lights were throwing a reflection off the window, so he couldn't see the driveway. So what did this idiot do? He turned the lights off, and now he's sitting at 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the federal highway trying to back a truck up into a driveway that was barely bigger than the width of his truck. And he never saw her coming over this slight incline, and obviously him sitting in the dark at 2 o'clock in the morning, she had no chance.
Oh, that's awful, and having to endure.
Yeah,
I think the testimony is that your marriage has endured, and you know, you continue to bless us with your. I mean, your past body of work to me is outstanding, but yet you're always a wealth of you know, new insights. And one of the things that I do like having you on here, and if we've had you in the past, and I've seen you do in other places, is so many. And I don't know, maybe this is something you'd be willing to speak to. Is when I think of the modern day ball player, I kind of think of them as almost like cartoon characters come to life. You don't really see them with a lot of experience or being willing to converse on a number of issues. You're no holds barred. That's why I really love you. And I don't know. I mean, we're guys in your generation just a lot more down to earth and concerned about a lot more different things than today's players might be?
Oh, I think so. Although I believe that they're capable of learning so much more because we have so many more outlets for the news and what's going on in our society around us and for us. I think that if you don't take advantage of the information that's coming out so you can make your own decisions, you're silly. I mean, I hate like hell to hear a player come out and say, well, you know, I'm a Democrat, and I've just decided to become a Democrat, or I'm a Republican, I just decided. Listen, I'm not quite sure at the age of 22, 23, you can be anything. I think eventually you fall into one of those camps, but what bothers me about that is when they say I am a this or I am that is whatever happened to voting for just the best guy? I mean, why does he have to be categorized? And I understand why. It's all about money, isn't everything. But it always gets my attention a little bit when they say, well, it's like, who's our guy that's gone nuts here in Detroit? Sharon, what's the guy's name? The guitar player, the Hunter. The Hunter, I can't hunt. What? Nugent, Ted Nugent, who's gone nuts here. I mean, he thinks he's Wyatt Earp and Buffalo Bill and Howdy Doody all rolled up into one right now, for God's sakes. And he's making all these ridiculous statements. So a year ago, he says, well, Obama's reelected, something like, and I'm paraphrasing, one of us won't be alive, or one of us is going to leave the country, or one of us this or that. I mean, to say those kinds of things with the kind of violence that seems to permeate our society, I mean, it's so irresponsible.
Yeah.
It's so childish.
Understand.
You know, I mean, of course, the Secret Service visited him. They investigated him, and you know, he got a lot of people into his life real quick. And again, this year he's popping off again for some reason. I guess what he doesn't realize, Ted, you lost the election. Move on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they realize that the election's all over with. The way you listen to some of these guys right now, you wouldn't think that the election was done and over with, and we got another 4 years before Hillary gets elected. So, but that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the lunatics, whether they be left or right, coming out with these outrageous, silly, unprofessional statements. And, you know, here's a guy with a big high profile, super big profile, at least in the state of Michigan. And there are people out there that really believe him about leaving the country, or there'll only be one of us alive, you know, in a year, that type of stuff. I mean, you got to wonder, don't you? I mean, how a guy who was a star, who no longer has a star above him, could be so irresponsible. Or then on the other hand, I tell everybody, come on, the guy hasn't had a successful record in 10, 15 years, and he may just be drawing some support from his element, which is to the right at least. And the bottom line simply is that he's trying to gather enough support for people to go out and buy records from him again. That's what I think a lot of this is about. Rush Limbaugh found a key to success many years ago when it came to making money, and that was going to the right side, staying on the right side, and just banging the left side. And I think a lot of these guys are just people who decided that, man, I'm going to do that too, but I'll do it in my own style. I think Nugent is one of those.
It's an interesting thing, because how much of this discussion have we had where we talk about someone who is trying to profit at the expense of someone else, when if you take, and you know, it's the same thing, I believe, in sports as it might be in politics, as it might be in government. Sitting here in the East, you know, we have within, you know, fairly reasonable driving distances, Boston, New York. You know, there's two teams in New York, there's one team in Boston. You want to go a little farther, it's Philadelphia. And I mean, I can remember growing up, I mean, the thing between the Yankees and the Red Sox was, you know, it was a rivalry, but it wasn't like, you know, what it is now, which kind of seems like, I don't want to call it borderline mayhem, but sometimes it gets that way. And I mean, do you agree? Are things a lot more acute today than they were years ago?
No, I agree with you. I think the intensity is out of control at times. And if we really talk about the intensity, all we got to do is look at the NFL. I mean, some of the fans go crazy. I mean, during these ball games, the fights, people walk in with the other jersey, the other team's jersey, and they wind up getting the hell kicked out of them. Look what happened to the poor kid in L.A. A year ago, year and a half, a little more than a year ago. Stadium, and he's been in a coma, for God's sakes. I think he's just, I'm not sure if he's still in a coma or not, but that kid was in at least a hospital for 4 or 5 months, unconscious, and he got beat up by 2 drunks. I mean, at a baseball game.
At Dodger Stadium.
It makes no sense to me. You know, we used to have some arguments once in a while in the stands, but they were, you know, more or less arguments. They weren't pushing and shoving. They weren't throwing things at people. They weren't trying to hurt anybody. I mean, if you could have an opinion about the Yankees, and I can have one too, and we can talk as gentlemen. We don't have to throw things at each other. But this culture that we have developed somehow is awful. I'll give you another example. I'll give you the best example I can give you.
Okay.
I don't know why this happens, but somebody has to help me with this. I got a freeway out here called 96 in the state of Michigan. And I'm on it probably 4 or 5 days a week, sometimes more. And our speed limit here is 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, you clip pretty good there.
And I do normally about 75 miles an hour on the freeway. Do you know I'm normally the slowest guy on the road, and most of the people who are passing me, now they're passing me on the right. I'm talking about one segment of the drivers. The people who are passing me on the right are all young women, 19, 20, 25 years old. I don't know where this sense of total immunity has come from regarding a disaster driving a car at 85 miles an hour on the freeway. I don't know where it's come from. It's scary. They pay no attention. And you know what the biggest enemy is? They're all on cell phones. Everyone, I'm telling you, 85% of the people that go by me on the right are young women, and they got a cell phone in their hand. They're talking, paying no attention to anything. See, I believe, and I don't know how the laws are right now in New York, but I believe what they're going to have to come to sooner or later is you're not going to be able to make a phone call from your car while you're driving the car, while the car is moving. I think we're going to come to that. And I wouldn't be a guy that would vote for it probably, but because I've got the, what do they call it, the thing from GM, the telephone in the car plus my cell phone.
Oh, yeah, right, the OnStar, I believe.
Yeah, the OnStar. Yeah. So, I mean, you can make a phone call anytime you want with OnStar. But that's not that doesn't mean it's the safest thing in the world. I mean, because you're still, maybe only 95% of your attention is being devoted to driving. I don't know. But somehow or other, I think we got to get the telephones out of the car, and it's going to take somebody with some giant chutzpah to step up and put that law. We got some cities in Michigan that actually do have the law, and I think it's working its way through the courts right now. But I suspect one day we will get to that, whereby if you are talking on a telephone in a car, especially holding one in your hand, that in fact you're liable to get a ticket, because we're having way too many accidents. I mean, it's horrendous. And I mean, everybody. Well, our city used to have 1 or 2 accidents every morning in Detroit. Now you could turn the TV on any morning now, Monday through Friday, and you'll see by the time the news comes on at 5 o'clock in the morning and goes off at 9:30, hell, you've seen 15 accidents, 20 accidents. It's amazing to me that we don't lose more people. That's what is getting my attention, that more people aren't dying.
And you know, and all of that, I think, is the national attention span. And you know, if you want to bring that to baseball, and kind of as we get down towards the ending portion of the interview, if you go to any sort of a syndicated film service and you study baseball crowds, this is a fascination to me. And you see the people in the crowds, back when you were pitching in '68 and perhaps before, or the World Series films, or when you guys were in the series, and everybody is like seated, they'll stand up for a good play, they're dressed, it's like going to the theater.
Sure.
And they're paying attention. You see a lot of women, which really surprises the heck out of me, with a scorebook or a program actually keeping score. I mean, I don't know of any. I mean, I know of several women who tell me they can keep score, but they're closer in my age than not. And
right.
You go to a ball game today, and and what's happening in the crowds is how many people are actually out there watching the game. And I think all of this kind of speaks to the thing of like the cell phones and the multitasking, and I've got to be here and I've got to be there. And I don't know, Denny, it's so chicken and egg, but this is the impression I have.
No, I agree. I think people are there to be, listen, when you kept score years ago on a scorecard, you were a part of the game. You had your own way of keeping score. Basically, we all did it the same way, but you still had your own little quirks that you did on your own with your own scorecard. So we were a part of the game. We were invested in the game. Today, they're not. They go out there. There are so many more things to do. You can now have a double scotch. You can have a martini. You can have beer, $8 a bottle, by the way. You can have
Same here.
A full, beautiful dinner for, $50, $60. You can really spend some serious dough on some serious stuff. And I think that's great. I think it's marvelous. But I think what we have done is put too much emphasis trying to enhance the game. And the game is only enhanced when people score runs and people win, your home team. In other words, if your home team is not winning, what happens? The people don't come by that sushi. They don't come by those ribeye steaks. They don't come by and buy the shrimp cocktails. You've got fewer and fewer people. So I think every once in a while the clubs lose sight of the fact there's only one thing that puts people in the baseball park: winning and stars. And if you don't have both of them, man, you're in for a long trip. I mean, all we got to do is look around the league right now and see who's drawn and who's not drawn, and that'll tell you pretty much what they've got in their organization.
Now, what might be your thoughts for the Tiger team in 2013?
Oh, listen, I'll give you as bold as I can be. I think they're going to run off. I think they're going to win it by 20. If this isn't the best, and the reason why I make these predictions is because, number one, we are in the worst baseball division I have ever seen in my life. It's the worst talent division I think baseball has ever seen. I know they had a meeting during the winter about trying to help Kansas City, about trying to help Minnesota a little bit. Whether they have or have not, I don't know. There's only one way the Tigers don't win it by 20 games this year, and that's if the big guy, our third baseman, Cabrera, gets hurt. If he falls out of the lineup, it'll be more difficult. But they'll still win it. They just won't win it by as much. Cabrera makes everybody a much better hitter. Whether you're hitting in front of him or whether you're hitting behind him, you become automatically 15, 20 points better of a hitter. At least 15 or 20 points. He is by far the most talented hitter in baseball today, number one. And number two, the reason why is, number one, yes, he's very talented. Number two, we're in the worst division in baseball with the worst pitching, maybe in the history of the game. Somebody should look up those records to see what this team has done with the other teams in our division and just get an idea of how bad the pitching is in our division. We've got, at least in our division, and I think in baseball generally, but worse in our division, I think we've got so much AAA and AA pitching in our division that it borders on minor league baseball, except for our club. I mean, you very seldom see somebody go out there and go toe-to-toe with us. Yeah, we won it barely this past year, and I can't figure that one out either. But the only thing that I can point to is our consistency hasn't been there. With our pitching staff, by the way, everybody thinks we got the greatest pitching staff in the world. We got Verlander, who's a pretty good pitcher, no question.
Darn
about
good
it.
pitcher,
Good
yeah.
stuff. He has yet to prove to a lot of people that he is the star that everybody has put in the middle of his head. Then we got Scherzer, and we got a couple of other guys this year. Fister, who fooled us all the first year he came here. We thought he was the next coming of Cy Young, for God's sake, when he got here. But we now realize he doesn't throw the ball as hard as what we thought. He's got good stuff, by the way, but he doesn't throw the ball with the great velocity. But there are 4 or 5 pitchers that throw strikes. And in this game, especially in this division, as long as you throw strikes, you're going to win a whole lot more games than you're going to lose.
Understood. Denny, I hate to say this, we're out of time. You've blessed us here tremendously. With your kind permission, we'd love to have you back as time goes on. We'll talk about the season and whatever else is on your heart and mind. And, have a great day, a great week. We continually wish you and Sharon the best. And we'll be talking so soon, my friend. And thank you so very much for being with us here today on Connecticut Morning.
All right, you guys have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denny. And that was Denny
Bye-bye.
McLain, the legendary Denny McLain, 31-8 in 1968, and a person, as you can see, who has a wealth of experience and opinions on many, 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 many things. It's Tony DeAngelo here on February 12, 2013, and we'll be back real soon. Denny's starting to get me a little bit in the baseball frame of mind here. We're going to show you some old baseball clips. That's what I think we'll do. We'll be back after this.
Beneath the cover of another perfect wonder where it's so white as snow, privately divided by a world so undecided, and there's nowhere to go. In between the cover of another perfect wonder, and it's so white as snow, running through the field where all my tracks will be concealed, and there's nowhere to go. Oh! When to descend to amend for a friend of the chance